Write this down, the Occupy Revelation. This is huge tonight. Who you are, it is not defined by what you do. Who you are is defined by who Jesus is to you. Oh, it's good preaching. Who you are, it's not defined by what you do. And this has to be a revelation. You know the difference between a revelation and information? Information is what a human tells you. Revelation is what God tells you. And if you have a revelatory spirit, information matters. Without it, you're going in and out of church getting information. But if you get a revelation tonight where God can speak to you, you're going to start realizing, oh, cool, who I am, it's not defined by what I do. It is defined by who Jesus is to you. So if he is everything, and he has completed you, and he has saved you, and he has forgiven you, and he has graced you, what you do is great, but it doesn't define you. This means you are the greatest asset to any organization. You are the greatest asset on any street because you realize, yeah, you might think I just do coffee, but I'm actually called by God. I'm the greatest Starbucks barista in history. You no longer need the labels of this world because you've already been labeled by your God. So it doesn't matter what somebody else says about you because you know what God has already proved to you. He qualified you. Some of y'all need to hear that. You are qualified. You are qualified right now. I don't care about what you've done, where you've been. All I want to focus on is what he's done. The road that he walked, you're qualified right now. But some of you have been living under the label so long of, what others say about you and maybe clinging to something that you do. That's your identity as a Christian. This world can be shaky around you, but you can remain solid because you know who God has called you to be. I find this amazing to read because Jesus was just a carpenter. No label, no nothing, just the knowledge that he brings heaven with him. That he has the hand of God with him. So he just walked by and he turned a walk into a revival. He turned a point A to point B to where somebody ended up finding Jesus and their whole life changed. What if I told you today that maybe you've been overlooking all the stuff that God can do because of the label somebody else has put on your life? We live in the most insecure part of our generation in history. We are the generation that's always waiting to get a label, and then I'm going to have some dignity. New York City might even be worse than LA, where people will treat you a certain way according to your label. You don't get dignity for who you are. You get dignity for what you have. Jesus is the opposite. No labels, just who you are should be enough. Some of you need to hear this. Maybe you're waiting for that day. Maybe you're waiting for this big moment. Here's the truth. You're ready right now to be used by God. Jesus had some sandals, and he had his long hair, and he just walked up and pointed at somebody, and he was always a carpenter, always from a nobody town, but he always carried the presence of God. What if you stopped waiting for the revival and had a revelation that you are the revival? What if you stopped waiting to be qualified and you realize, well, maybe God's qualified me now. Maybe the weaknesses you've been looking at are the very things he's going to use to lead somebody else to him. What are you waiting for? Even in our normal social, even justice history, you think about all the great stuff that's happened in our country over the last maybe century. You got somebody like Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for most of his adult life. You know what happened to him in prison? They had to change out guards regularly because anyone who got close to his cell would end up getting saved and become his friend. He turned a prison into a pulpit. Maybe you've heard of a little lady named Rosa Parks, who just got sick and tired down in Alabama of people telling her where she could sit. So one day she said, I'm not moving any longer. And it spurred this thing we know as like the civil rights movement. She turned a bus into a breakthrough. Maybe you heard of another guy named Martin Luther King. Ever heard that name? He went on a march, and it became a movement. What if you tonight realize that I'm not going to wait for my street or my job to label me. I'm going to start labeling my job. I'm going to start labeling my street. You said it was a dead end. I'm here. It's no longer a dead end. You said I'm just a student in school. I'm not just a student in school. I'm not going to wait for the day to happen to me. I'm going to happen to my day. I'm not going to wait for this thing to go down in my life. I'm going to actually walk into whatever God has put in my path and turn it into something where somebody is going to feel the presence of God.